It's been weird lately. Not even sure how to evaluate it. Uh, is there anything you can share observantly? In what nature is it weird? Like, I can imagine perhaps it's suddenly okay. Kind of weird. Like, the last time we talked, it was like, we're still discovering stuff, trying to find some change of environments and experimentation. Perhaps what you were feeling, a little like just gone away all of a sudden, that could be a weird thing. I feel that's a one that some people would, a lot of individuals who maybe are experimenting or like a change in environment or pace tends to find weird, when suddenly you don't need to work on it anymore. It just worked out itself. Kind of a pleasant surprise. At the same time, it feels weird because you're not quite sure what you did. I'm sharing an instance of a specific example from someone that I've been acquainted with. They're like, "Ah, man, each day it's just, I don't know." And then suddenly it's like, "Hey, you know what? It's kind of weird, but I feel great." That kind of weird. I'm making a lot of presumptions, so just sharing, making it less feeling like awkward, you know, if it's just one-sided exchange. Your immediate thoughts have been losing structure. Okay. Like the comments that would appear in my head don't make any sense to me after the fact a lot of times, and I didn't feel like that as much before. Interesting. So you're starting to think something, but then you lose the train of thought. You're not experiencing any mania or anything. How does that make you feel? As like a personal share, right? I'd be kind of, it would probably be a source of anxiety if I keep losing train of thought. Might be a little bit it could turn into a source of frustration. Huh. It's like, sometimes I feel like the double blade flurry just ends up. Well, what is the magnitude on this? 715 as opposed to 2600s? Oh, maybe I'm getting damage bonus from being in stealth too. Sometimes double blade flurry seems to, yeah, 50 additional crit severity. Oh, I have to land a crit though. 50%. Probably why I feel it's stealthing out for a lash is Not cutting it. L is polling. What is he doing? Pulling mobs when I don't want them? You keep those, L. It's all up to you. Annoying, I see. There are a lot of those comments I said out loud and wish I didn't looking back at it because I wouldn't agree with it. Literally the next day, I see. I gotta that's a clearer picture. I don't imagine you're emotionally compromised during those situations. Were they in like the heat of the moment? And you're saying this is happening more often than usual. You did say, I don't know, so it could be difficult to know what the change has been. But if it was something that deals with emotionally compromised things, like emotionally compromised situations more often, just out of nowhere, like for example, sudden urge of release, right? Finding an outlet for it, or a proper outlet for it, can make it feel less annoying. Like playing a video game that allows you to address that specific thing, though. Like that specific emotion. But if you're not emotionally compromised, you would probably have to like think about it more, I suppose. See if you can gather any additional observations about what is causing that compulsion. It does sound like intrusive thoughts, though, what you're describing. Intrusive thoughts, I would say, is more likely to elicit, I don't want to say regret, but often that's kind of the word that most people would use, like upon reflection, like instant remorse kind of thing, or maybe delayed remorse. Intrusive thoughts is what comes to mind. Ice-Spired Peak is after this. Right. You hold him down, L. Good job. Keep them busy, will ya? Oh. Oh, okay, never mind. I was kind of interesting. I didn't realize you can at will while stealth, and it doesn't break stealth. Hmm. I typically don't act outside of the encounter power while stealth. Maybe it did break it. Oh, no. I know how it works now. I remember this. The meter goes down. With every action, the meter goes down. And you exit stealth by cashing in on the stealth trigger, which happens to be the encounters. I think that's how it worked. Okay. Rightio, up and away. We're over 60% after this. I got, oh no, we're not. We're halfway because we have Ice Spire. No, wait. No, we're over halfway. We're over 60%. Like, this would be 60%, I think. Because we have Ice Spire and Whispering Caverns. Oh no, I forgot about the Chasm. No, we're only halfway. I forgot about the Chasm. So we're gonna head off to Ice Spire Peak after this, and then Chasm. Every time I think of Chasm, I remember every once in a while I would meet someone who says Chasm. It's kind of, I'm sorry, I'm kind of laughing at their expense, but most people are pretty open to the idea. Honest mistake, right? English do be not having universal rules, right? The Chasm. Did I get anything for this? Power? Oh, right, Paragon. Let's just go with Assassin, right, to showcase, because I like Death Strike. Yep, we're going Assassin. Gotta brush up on my stuff. What did you gain? Bloodbath? Slash around the slashing? I don't know. Bloodbath is just fun to look at, so we'll use that. Duelist Flurry. Yes, we replace this over here. This is just slashing. Attacks from each have a chance to add bleed. Okay, right. I remember that. What was this? Tactics. Increase your accent point gain. Yeah, it's okay. Okay. Right. So at the halfway point, right here, once we turn this in, I don't think it deals with being emotionally compromised. More like overthinking the way people could misinterpret what I say to them in a casual even though that's probably not too important. Oh, okay. Huh. Give me a sec. Let me go to the bathroom real quick. Hold on to that thought. I have a few follow-up questions about that. 1 second once we get into our next pace. I imagine when such events happened, your present company is receptive to that, and that it's not creating friction. And then regarding the being annoyed and then feeling a sense of perhaps a remorse or triviality after the fact, right? I would say if it doesn't create friction with anyone and you surround yourself with a company that allows you to practice and take advantage of that type of overthinking and be welcoming to it, it actually, a lot of times, without intellectually having to figure out a plan or anything, it actually becomes very intuitively efficient over time. So they're really, I guess what I'm trying to say is, paradoxically, that stuff, not thinking about overthinking or the consequences of overthinking, you don't feel anyone had a problem with it. That's great. So here's the weird part. I'm using the word weird because this is going to sound weird, but often, obviously, grain of salt, careful. As long as you have an outlet for expression, and that expression is encouraged, or maybe even augmented. So if you have if you become a positive inspiration for further conversation, and that feeds back on your company, right, the people, and you find an encouraging environment, That kind of stuff enables the practice of that. And without having to intellectually overthink about what to do about it, it kind of fixes itself. It's an incredible intuitive process. So surrounding yourself with like deep conversations or conversations that tend to lead to overthinking or overanalyzing is going to provide some comfort. And with that comfort, you'll be more willing or welcoming to practice that skill, and it becomes normalized. So in a way, you could even see it as an advantage. So that type of positive reinforcement can make it feel less annoying after the fact. So it doesn't end up being, was I right? Was I wrong? Did it make sense? Or did I overthink it? I don't remember what my line of thought is. Instead, it becomes more of, I should do this more often because it's fun. I have people who also like to do it. And eventually, that skill gets practiced. And then with that skill gets practiced, you start developing more confidence. And then with the normalization, you become more efficient at remembering your line of thinking. Having negative reinforcement, that's why I asked, generally speaking. Like if someone had a problem with it or is leading to friction, that can make you feel progressively, it will develop progressively as a conflict of interest with yourself. So you're going to try very hard not to overthink and behave in a way that might not be intuitive to you. So right now it just seems like yeah, without sounding like a pun, it's weird, but that type of thing, as long as you have a in my opinion, strongly have an environment that enables you to do that, a lot of people intuitively just benefit from it in the end. It's kind of like that's the kind of the idea behind school. Worm, I'm not sure what your relationship with school is or being around an academic environment, but when you have the propensity to overthink generally, and then you associate it with maybe things that don't make sense at the time, or I don't have enough information, that type of concern, surrounding yourself with individuals who do behave like that too and are open and know and understand that at the time when you do these things, it may have made sense, then it makes less sense later, or maybe more information comes to light, that becomes a social norm. I only say this because it's something that I hold personal. My experience in overcoming this constant annoyance, I won't say it's emotionally compromising, but it can become emotionally compromising when remorse, regret, or feeling like you didn't give your best response in a time like this. It can be helped normalize when it becomes a welcoming occurrence. And a welcoming occurrence generally deals with having company that you can express it. And that skill is overly complicated. Like, it's incredibly complex. So practicing the skill and intuiting it typically is far more manageable than trying to understand it in an intellectual capacity. That's kind of my take on it. So in a way, it is kind of weird, but I think if you have supportive peeps and they maybe are more likely to overthink in the future or something like that, it can be an incredibly positive feedback. And you would, as a person, like as a human being, doing it more often normalizes it. And then you can probably develop even more skills. Like, your skills will become more and more proficient, provided you have a positive support for that. A lot of times when we think about overthinking, right? The perspective on overthinking, you're trying to suggest that your company, the people you are around, think you're overdoing something, and then they provided some sort of indicator that you are overthinking. And overthinking tends to create friction. So if your friends are telling you, like trying to gaslight you into overthinking or like your whatnot, that is one that requires some intellectual effort to like navigate. But you know, if you're already in an environment that enables you to do that welcomingly, like you have people you trust that allows you to do that, it's actually quite, in my opinion, healthy to continue doing that. The more often, in fact, I probably would cautiously encourage you to do that, because it's incredible how much you improve over time just by intuiting things. It motivates you to find inspiration and whatnot. It's why you it's one of the things that the ideal case for universities, right? You put people together that are prone to overthinking, relatively speaking, with the present company, but you put them all together and your level of thinking would no longer be overthinking. It'd be similar, and they would feed back on each other and allow you to naturally grow and develop and normalize your level of thinking at the moment. Overthinking or underthinking would suggest a conflict of interest. From when I see that, it means some people are thinking at a certain level and others are not, and that usually leads to miscommunication, right? But not all forms of miscommunication suggest that you're overthinking. And being okay with it if you're not emotionally compromised. We're also establishing that you're not emotionally compromised. If you're emotionally compromised, then it's very hard to know if it's a favorable thing and a sustainable thing. If you find it's very natural for you to do it, finding an environment that allows you to naturally do it more often will allow you the opportunities to figure out and work around and optimize that skill or that tendency. You can probably do it here, or what I mean is you can probably talk if it's like just like, I don't know, video games or something. You're perfectly welcome to talk about it here. I don't think there's a likelihood that I will ever consider anyone overthinking things, considering the mania that I typically cope with myself. But finding opportunities to do it is the most encouraging thing. As someone who struggles with thought storms and mania from time to time about thoughts, and then having constant reflection, right? So, for example, I would have a discussion on stream or something. It would last for 2 or 3 days in my head, and I would start harnessing that. So what I would do now is I go through the routine of continuously using it to develop a new skill, as opposed to focusing on whether that person or other people were concerned that I overanalyze or I'm wrong, or maybe they could see it differently. I used it to motivate myself to learn more about the topic. That may not necessarily be what you end up doing with practice. But first, normalizing it allows you the opportunity to discover what works for you, if that makes sense. Why is this highlighted? Yo, guys, seriously, buttheads. I'm trying to look at why my character card is highlighted, you buttheads. Leave me alone. Power? Oh. Assassin's target. Your attack applies a stack of target to the first enemy. The effect stacks up 10 times and increase the damage of your next encounter. Does that consume the stack? Probably not. You coat your weapons with deadly toxin, causing encounter and daily to apply DLT. This deals 30 once every 3 seconds for 9 seconds and stacks. I mean, this is just for clearing purposes, so let's just take the toxic blade. When I'm applying something that I generally use myself. So when something feels weird and you really don't have an explanation for it, right? I like to go and ask myself those same questions. So like, can I do this more without like, you know, without something stopping doing it? And then how was I feeling? Like emotionally compromised? Like what was I, is it inconsistent? If you can do it consistently, then often being able to establish that consistency will either help you figure it out, or it offers you a new opportunity and a new skill you can harness. That's usually the two more common cases. There are a lot of other alternatives, but generally speaking, if it's sustainable and you're not emotionally compromised, you can turn it into a habit. And when and since it's sustainable, it's not like a quote unquote bad habit to have. And since it's not a bad habit, it can turn out to be useful, even if you don't know what it is right now. Like how you could use that to your advantage. But the idea is, it sounds like it's healthy. As in, healthy as in, okay, maybe not the word healthy. It's not detrimental. So you don't have like a negative, non-sustainable friction somewhere. So often you have to play it by ear, right? Go on and do it a couple more times and let it see how you can figure out, you know, challenge yourself to do it better. However you feel it should be done, or how you can take advantage of it. It's like, oh yeah, now I'm overthinking. Maybe I can channel this into something else. Things like that. Dude, this guy just freaking blocked me. Wow. That guy just totally just blocked me on that. What a jerk. Fair game. Fair enough. Can I change instances? Oh, I can totally change instances. Icefire Peak is definitely where you want to change instances. No fighting over non-unique interactions. Yeah, the thing about the university is that's kind of the thing. You place yourself, there's pre-selection involved, right? If you're going to a university, you're prone to probably do that kind of thing. So if you enrich your chances of meeting people who enables each other, it's remarkable how much you don't have to literally know intellectually what you're doing, but just the act of repetition creates less weirdness, right? Weirdness comes from it being different and being unfamiliar. So just natural ability to have the luxury or the privilege to just do it anyways, unapologetically, makes it less weird. And when it becomes less weird, it becomes second nature. And then you typically take second nature things and you can bend it, do what you want with it, because it's no longer weird and it's very approachable. At least that's for a healthy habit. And by healthy, I mean sustainable habit. Something that doesn't lead to a decline in your quality of life. often things of intellectual nature tends to not really substantially help nor hurt a person's quality of life. However, it has the potential to help when you find a use case for it. And what you're kind of describing is the most common use case is school or being in a intellectual environment would be an incredibly useful use case for a skill like that. And it won't become a skill until you practice it. So if you have friends and company and whatnot that allow you to do that, it can most naturally become a skill and not attach negative feelings to it. So the most determining factor, if it like 2 or 3 determining factors, but this is one of them. To develop a healthy habit that's sustainable, it usually have to start with not associating negative feelings with it. So if you're only feeling just annoyed, that's not a deal breaker. Fighting with your friends, that's gonna be a deal breaker. Something you can control, like being annoyed, that's you can outweigh that pretty easily. Most people can outweigh that pretty easily over time. A great example of this shift is when you're a kid and all the kids naturally do something else other than overthinking or thinking at a specific level. That is like a no choice situation. So that's one situation where a kid could be really redefined, like a person could really be affected by negative association to the point where it would cause a younger person to underperform when they don't want to. And then because they normalize that, when they get older, they will choose to underperform because it's become a normalized behavior, as opposed to applying what they could do. And then spend a whole lifetime of people telling you that you could do something better with your talent, like you could utilize it for a month, but since you develop a habit, it's incredibly hard to break later on and reform, even though you might be able to intellectually appreciate what others are saying. Like, I understand, but I don't feel like I want to. That kind of thing sucks pretty hard. So always making sure that something new or something that's happening, right, constantly or unexpectedly, making sure that it's not associated with something undesirable, because it can create a dissonance. You want to do it, you constantly do it, but it's constantly making you feel worse. That's a recipe for depression. I think it also overlaps with that thing about not being as responsive to achievements. That's fair. So being content when something worked out, your brain shuts that part off and goes into quietly thinking about how that wasn't good enough, which is fine, but not fun in the moment. Yeah. Yeah. How often does that happen? You're weighing frequency as well. We gotta weigh frequency. I mean, if it doesn't substantially lower your quality of life, I suppose where it's at is pretty acceptable. It is an untapped resource, though. Trying to get a level of... So, we're not saying you have to, but it's an untapped resource where you could find ways to feel more reward from it. However, it's not hurting you either, because it feels like a neutral thing. It's always nice to look at the potentials of your habits and see where you can like squeeze out a little bit more things that you can control that makes you feel better. Put it in your back pocket, you know, for a rainy day or something. For me, it would be my rainy day is probably doing something like this. So if there's always like a mania or loose, I use something to focus my attention or focus my anxiousness, right? My anxiety, and then use it as a way to think about other things, but with the comfort that I'm doing something that I know I can do. That is sustainable, because I can do this quite a while. So I couple this with things I don't understand at the moment. I gain a way of relaxing while tackling the thoughts. You're not sure when it doesn't happen? Doesn't mean I'm motivated enough to listen to it every time though. I see. Yep, I got it. Sorry, double negative. It takes me a while to yes, I got it. So when you don't recognize when you fail to appreciate the reward. So it's an undesirable thing. It does diminish a lot of so an experiment that typically happens with this is a lot of times it's recommended that you have, or I typically would encourage a change of stimuli. So what would constitute as a change of stimuli? If you're into progressive skill building, actually let me check these quickly. Impossible to catch. You muster all your will and break. That's not very useful for PvEing, so we're gonna skip that. That seems more like a momentary thing. When you use your daily power, your stealth meters refill for 5 seconds. Your damage is... it's okay. One way is to provide a different stimuli, right? So a different stimuli would be if you're into progressive incremental progress, and then it has become dull, right? You don't feel the reward since it's progressive, like a life skill tends to be. Participating in instant gratification or big deltas can help you resensitize yourself to something. So doing a task that have a high delta. One would be something that requires a lot of luck. That will get you lots of lows and frustrations, but when you end up lucky, right, it gives you a high elation, and it can be instant, it can be unexpected, it's not controlled, and it's not expected. A lot of times when it comes to incremental achievements, and then suddenly you expect it, it becomes deflating. It takes that feeling away. So playing or doing something that may foreseeably be luck based, not skill base, as in building up a skill over time, can re-energize that type of appreciation. It's a change of environment that doesn't have a lot of consequence, unless you go and be emotionally compromised and like buy lottery tickets or something. I'm not suggesting something like that. Something sustainable that you can always rely on without suggesting any form of monetary investment. Trying to throw something in, like trying to make something where it only happens once in a while is kind of the thing. A less like in a less risky thing would be, I don't know, go on your favorite streaming service and click on random and just watch it. Or basically release control, right? Find something that you relieve control, and the luck is having that thing be something you like. But you're not gonna ever do it again. Like for a while. You're not gonna pursue the thing if you like it. You're just there to see how lucky you can be that it lands on something you like. Or how lucky you can be if you think you're looking for something you don't like. Like if you feel like you're a personal universal liker for some reason, like everything on this streaming service you like, well, then to get lucky is the task you want. So maybe to get lucky, it has to be something you don't like, so you can like criticize it. Or the idea is taking expectation out and be pleasantly surprised. Often being a very controlling, or need for a very controlling person, or having hard work pay out and that kind of thing, it can dull the senses. Because you know it's going to happen. That's usually what I would say. It's a personal thing too. My reconciliation with that type of thing personally, it's quite a different approach. But what I typically do is I rely on other people. I use other people as a source of deviating my expectations. So instead of placing it into my control by like automation or choice, I let other people decide what I do for a little bit, for like a while. Actually, I actually do it quite a lot because it's been quite some time since I've voluntarily engaged in something that I don't know what's going to happen usually, realistically. I let other people take control of it. Like asking a friend, what do you want to do today? You know? Like, hey, I really want to be surprised. Can you surprise me with a movie? You know? So that could be great, having a significant friend or a significant other saying like, hey, you know, is there something you want to do that you know I am not thinking about? And then you jump in that with an investment on another person, and that can really reinvigorate your passion for what you do in general, because you spent a little bit of time away from yourself. You're trying to stay in the moment with someone else. So that can also provide some different stimuli that breaks up the, I don't want to use the G word, but the life grind, right? I view grinding with fondness, but I can't use that too often, assuming, you know, the vast majority of people would not associate that word or that imagery with something pleasant. They think of long process, lots of effort, diminished return. Those are the kind of things that get associated with grinding. Actually explains things a little. I wonder if people intuitively do this normally. I wonder that too. I'm not in a position to sample enough people to really know that. I do feel it's more likely that people do this intuitively. Like, it's more likely than what I just did, which is to explain it intellectually. It's a lot of information that technically is diminished return, because most of the time people learn this information intellectually to solve their own problems with mental wellness. So that problem doesn't ever come up, which means they do it intuitively. It doesn't come up. So you don't necessarily need to know intellectually these things. If you already have a healthy environment, healthy lifestyle that allows you to intuit this stuff. That's kind of one of the nice things about, oops, I was supposed to go up the tunnel. The nice things about being intuitive. Relying on intuition may seem like a crutch, but it also liberates a lot of time to do things you intellectually are interested in. So it frees up a lot of things. I don't particularly think it's a crutch, but one can see it as a crutch. And I would add this asterisk. It's only a crutch when it stops solving your problems. That's kind of the thing. It's an asset and an advantage if it's self-sustaining without you knowing. That's what most people would call a talent, right? So there's a lot of ways to mentally and intellectually work around celebrating certain things. But yeah, generally intuitive things, it becomes a crutch when it fails. And then you have to intellectually process these things in order to maybe redirect how your intuition works. But it's a talent when it keeps working. So not everyone has that luxury, you know. Some things you have intuitions for, some things you don't. And in this case, it doesn't seem like there's really much that is getting in your way to rely on intuition. Honestly, sometimes knowing a lot can interfere as well. It produces nihilism, where you start convincing yourself, why bother if you already know the outcome, kind of thing. And ironically, that's what I'm appealing to when I say to introduce RNG into your life. If you're feeling numb to outcomes of reward, if you don't know what the reward is, it creates anxiety and tension that can lead to surprise and or disappointment, or nothing, which still leads to disappointment most of the time. But having that ability again can make you really appreciate again the consistent rewards that you work towards. Putting yourself in a chance that luck can shine on you or you can get unlucky in a non-risky way is, I would say, is the GOAT for someone who consistently has control over their life and choice. I know you probably hear this or see this in a different context, but when people are incredibly successful and they know that they have a lot of authority and power, a lot of times, quote unquote, some of their guilty pleasures to help them normalize their life again is to participate in activities that give them no control. Like, they give the control to someone else to better appreciate once again and sensitize that they have control and success. So it's not uncommon to have someone who's incredibly successful, controls everything, to find great pleasure in losing control. Like, and not them losing control, but giving their control to someone else. You can probably think of a certain, you know, activities that probably fit that, but you know, that's kind of how that works. At least that's what I'm suggesting. Not meant to be professional advice. Just something that works or is observed to work quite often, since I have more exposure to people who are incredibly controlling and wanting to have control and expect a lot of control, and are incredibly successful at that control. Find solace and pleasantly surprised, pleasantly disappointed. I know how that sounds. Pleasantly disappointed that they could not see what was going to happen. And that made them excited again. Most of the people I have in my life are incredibly controlling people. And what I mean by controlling people, they don't like controlling other people. They just like knowing what's going to happen. When they do things, they don't want to gamble or feel like they're gambling. And after a while, everything just seems boring. They don't engage in risk-taking anymore. Like, by risk-taking, I don't mean unhealthy risk-taking. Risk-taking in general, like playing a video game or doing something they're not good at, kicking a soccer ball every once in a while, that kind of thing. They continue to hone their skills in things that they know how to do, and continue to invest pragmatically in skills that they know are worth it or valuable. They stop getting on roller coasters because they hate roller coasters, that kind of thing. It makes one feel quite alive, I tell you, is what I would say when I do this thing. I'm kind of sort of describing myself too, since I describe friends I know, and my friends are quite similarly in that regards. So when that opportunity presents itself, it ultimately becomes an incredible life story. Someone just wanted to go to Vegas or something. Go there, and it's like, yeah, it was rocky and lots of roller coaster rides of emotions and inconvenient and hot and etc. But at the end of the day, it's exactly what is required to jumpstart that person again. So if you're feeling like you really want control of things, which does lead to overthinking a lot of times and trying to understand a lot of things, those things are converging on a personality trait that I'm very familiar with. It's often very encouraging if you let something harmless, like a video game, decide if you win at a game. Here's a personal example. I like simulation games, right? I'm not sure if you're familiar with simulation games, but a lot of times simulation games come in a more casual friendly of auto RPGs or something with like a gacha component, but we're not really focusing on the gacha component. It is part of that allure if you have money or resource, right? But in case you don't, we're going to ignore the gacha component. Having an auto RPG allows you to randomly trial and error your success by optimizing something, or purely out of intuitive guessing and checking. Having a game like that is kind of like having a simulation game where I don't know how much this money, I don't know how much this thing is going to make. How am I going to beat this game? Well, you can just put A and B together and see what comes out, and then put B and C together. That little spark of I'm just gonna plug and chug and see if it works out. It's like, oh yeah, this is pleasantly effective. Oh man, this is a dud. That type of experience takes the control out of your success. So when you are successful, it's pleasant. It's incredibly rewarding because you got lucky. If it's you just go through like 9 out of 10 failures, you just got unpleasantly unlucky. But the thing is, you're not into feeling in control. You're not developing necessarily a skill that deals with a game. You're developing a skill that deals with your emotions and your intellectual output. So it gives you an opportunity to discover that. How you feel when you're not in control. And that kind of perspective shift and focus for a while allows you to better appreciate what you typically do, is where I'm thinking these types of weird feeling and numbness is coming from. It's often the case in this way is because online in general, it makes you feel that you need to always be on your game. In fact, video games do this quite a lot. So, like the more trendy video games. Simulation's not on top of people's lists. I think the closest thing is City Skylines, probably. Hey, hello there. Yeah, City Skylines is probably the one, at least for Steam, the Steam community. That's probably the most sim-oriented. No, this is not my first time, no? Have you, do you play Neverwinter online? You're in the game. What platform do you play on? Can you add me? Sure, you can add me. Do you play on PC? That's kind of, also why I asked. I'm on PC. I don't usually write that in the title anywhere. Here's my tag. That's an eye, by the way. If you can see it. Oh, actually, I don't think it's... Is it case sensitive? I mean, it's displayed in all caps in that little box. I can probably just find it with, yeah, the middle character is an eye. I'm just doing Neverember recruitment, just for posterity. So we're doing a rogue to highlight some of the stuff. Oh, there you are. Alright. So what are you doing in the game at the moment? What are you working on? feel like matchmaking in some games feel that way, like whether you're gonna have an opponent that's gonna be fun to play against. Oh, that's an interesting thought. Yeah, it's the mindset of focusing on it. That's a really great one. You're seeing opportunities. That's great. I did not think about that. In fact, I might use that in the future. That's a really good one. It might turn into something else once you start processing it though. However, that is interesting. Using matchmaking as it. So like using it say like you have a negative feeling towards it, or maybe a positive feeling. Investigating it either way, like, oh yeah, why do I feel like this matchmaking was good, right? Like you won a game or something, why, or like you lost a game, but why does this match feel good? And just hyper focusing on that every once in a while you're doing that, interspersing your other games, like say your completionist games or something, can be very, very both emotionally and intellectually stimulating. I definitely didn't think about that, and that is interesting. That might actually be something I might use personally, because I haven't really felt the motivation to participate in PvP games since my Overwatch days. I do kind of sort of have something like that, but I didn't think of it in that framework. I still play Hearthstone, and I haven't really explored it in that way. That's a really interesting perspective. It's also because I don't play a competitive game that has an input thing, right? Hearthstone legitimately does have RNG in it. That is part of the input process. So outside of matchmaking, it's still considered a constructive RNG thing for many ways. Like I primarily play Battlegrounds too, and that component normalizes being lucky and unlucky on top of knowledge and skill work. So I know, and I get lucky in Battlegrounds. There's no contest. Like when you get lucky in Battlegrounds for playing it for a very long time, you are nearly unstoppable only by someone who is equally, if not more, lucky. So that type of RNG and stuff. I play Hearthstone at least a little bit every day. So that's kind of my my normalizer for my like a dragon things, right? I spend a vast majority of my time playing Like a Dragon, and even Like a Dragon itself has RNG in it. So it's why I love variety games. It keeps my life balanced. But it doesn't have to be for someone who's incredibly hyper focused. If you have a very hyper focused tendency and personality, it can work to your advantage to stick to one thing. Your stealth passively drains 50% as fast, but your stealth... Huh. That's kind of interesting. So if you're stealthing just for the purpose of... Oh no, but your cooldowns would have to match up with your use of stealth? Does that happen? Honestly, I'm kind of curious. This doesn't really play a part in most cases. I just want to see how fast it is. Because I'm only primarily stealthing just to cause the stealth bonus. Huh. Oh, we're done with Icespire Peak too. Oh. Yeah, right. Protector's Enclave. What am I doing? Oh, I quite like this. Quite like this, the Ice Spire look on the rogue. We go up, we learn about enchantments, of course. Take the enchantments. Upgrade the pep. Oh. Really? Okay. Okay. Oh, we're just gonna do this. We're just doing this run in solo. I don't. Just completing this run. I'm not sure what you're doing at the moment. Okay. You want to give me something? I don't need anything. Perfectly fine. Again, I'm doing this for Neverwinter recruitment. I'm a beta Neverwinter player. It's been quite some time. I don't think I need anything or want anything from anyone, but it's a very nice gesture. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm a very old player. I'm recording for this. Yeah, I appreciate it though. Thanks for the offer. Perhaps there will be someone that appreciates it. You know, there'll be other players. But yeah, it's been a while for me. We're doing this just for fun. For education. Matchmaking as RNG. Mind if I ask what game you had in mind when you were thinking about the matchmaking as RNG? I do play games where the matchmaking is quite meta. Like it's there are games that are incredibly meta heavy, so it does kind of feel like RNG. But I'm kind of curious what kind of games you had in mind. Subgenres tend to like range from the level of metagaming. So when you name a game that is incredibly meta heavy, yeah, that perspective definitely shines through. I'll have to say that definitely applied for a while for Overwatch. Okay, I usually give things away to streamers who play Neverwinter. Somehow helps them. That's fair. I think helping the community just in general is good enough. I have excess resources, so like I generally do that most of the time. It's a nice thought. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's nice to keep the community moving forward. I'm recording for that reason a lot of times. Yeah, we don't. It's, you know, it's not every day that you just run around. It's not every day that you just run around with resources, right? That it's unlikely to be from someone who requires resources. Are there more people that are new that are playing Neverwinter? I don't usually look in the... I do this on average once a week when a module drops to review the current design philosophies of the developers. It's out of personal academic interest. Like tomorrow is week 6. Yes. Tomorrow is week 6 of Demon Web's Pits module. How long have you been playing Neverwinter? What do you usually do nowadays? I just drop in for random queues each day. And then wait for the Monday reset. Speaking generally, because just so happens I'm doing something like Neverwinter, Neverember recruitment. I might be wrong. I kind of put SF6 on a shelf for a while. Oh yeah, that's right. You did mention about Street Fighter 6. Because I felt like I was improving at Osu. Okay. Also aim benchmarks. I focus on them instead. But then I saw an announcement on updates. Yeah, I know which update you're talking about. Looking forward to the update. Don't feel that enthusiastic about cosmetic items. I wouldn't either, for a very selective reason, but hopefully that changes. It deals with like the currency. And that situation feels much different to matchmaking. Oh, okay. It's like I don't even choose to participate in it, and it happens anyways. Yeah. Yeah, true. I mean, it's the state of live service, right? And you might be thinking, wait, Street Fighter 6 is live service? Yeah. Live service. I actually here's an unpopular opinion, and I would really frame not taking this out of context. But inherently, when you play a live service game, it deals with the habit of improving steadily, right? It's quite healthy if you have the resources to participate in whatever, if they end up introducing a microtransaction. That's why, in my opinion, those things inherently constantly ends up in live service models. Now, the thing here is there's a big difference to people who have a dissonance of how much resources they're willing to use. So it's different from someone who wants something and am not able to depart with the resource. But that's a dissonance. However, it's kind of like buying new shoes. If you're spending a habit, say I run 10% of the day of my whole life, I spend 10% of my time awake running. Buying new shoes every once in a while breaks the tedium of the incremental benefits I'm getting from running. Live service games use this approach, as in like the business model. It's very effective. You might not like it, right? Like those who have a different perspective that don't line with live service models. But the idea that microtransaction is very lucrative, it's not necessarily because it's predatory per se, like intentfully predatory. It's opportunistic understanding how live service models work. Occasionally buying a costume becomes habitually desirable, maybe intuitively. We talked about this, like versus intellectual and intuitive. Buying a costume every once in a while is that break from the tedium of live service games. So if you're steadily improving and you can buy something, it breaks that mold. So these models tend to be in here because it's very effective. When you get someone to habitually do something over and over again, their tendency to embrace spending something or breaking that tedium grows. Whether intuitively or not intuitively, like if you understand it intellectually, you would end up like me, where I would participate in that so that I can enjoy the game some more. And what I mean by that is it's a different take on that feeling where, oh, I played this game so much, I should give back to the developer. Then you buy a costume. That's fair. That works out. It rationally checks out. Alternatively, I played this game a lot. I'm really good at it, but nothing is really sprucing up my experience. Let me buy a costume. So you can combine that with the feeling that you're giving back to developers. It actually enhances everything. Like it enhances more. So now you have an incentive, provided you have the money. You know, we're making the assumption that you are willing and intentionally parting with money you have to spend. This is way different from the loud minority of people, and I'm going to call them minorities because these models are incredibly lucrative. So it would naturally be more safer to presume that the people who aren't upset are willingly parting to refresh their experience and give back at the same time, like a lot of other things. And they could be intuitively doing that. Intellectually, I have come to accept that every once in a while, buying something not only gives back to the developers, it actually also resets and refresh something that I like that could become not something that puts out anymore. So falling out of games that require skill development or live services like habit, that free gotcha spin, put all the puzzle pieces together. Every month you get a free spin every once in a while. It breaks up the tedium of the habit. So like, why do what is an example of Neverwinter? Have virtual currency, right? For days on end. And you get a key every single day. At some point in the next module, when a lockbox shows up, it's like, I'll use up a few keys. Or I'll use up like the 60 keys that however long I held off on, I still feel great. And then there you go, drop some keys. And intellectually understanding the function of that can help you. But I think most people just intuit this stuff. Like, man, I'm tired of the grind. Let's just dump some money. And it's a momentary reset. And then whether you have the resources or not, if you don't, buyer's remorse. If you do, nothing happens. Like, rarely anything happens. Like, what I mean is it's a positive experience. So first, establish that you have the resources, obviously. However, live service models now even circumvent that. Like Honkai Star Rail, they will just give you currencies so you can spin. So when you're doing the life service stuff, like you're constantly playing and habit forming and whatnot, you're rewarded with occasional gambo. And that occasional gambo breaks up that feeling of, yeah, I know what to get and what to expect. But even getting unlucky at gacha, knowing what that means and how it makes you feel, maybe even intellectually desiring to find meaning in that, helps you appreciate a lot of everything else. And it works really well, whether you know it or not. And to me, I think either by accident, coincidence, trial and error, or someone is just big braining, having like a whole slew of psychologists or like physicians or something. I'm not saying I'm right because I'm not a professional and I don't have enough experience. However, someone trialed and error, something landed on this model, and it just so happens I'm building a narrative around what I see and observe that matches and conveniently explains why certain models work right now. So if I was an executive, I suppose I would institute like free spin once a month. Every launch, every module launch, 5 free spins or 5 keys to something. And not necessarily gambling. There's another element of gambling. The keys have to reflect their value, even if it's given for free. So for example, if one way you can depreciate or divorce the value of a key is that you make free keys, as in the free keys are unique from paid keys. Then the value would be set to that. So whatever they get out of the box will be psychologically greater than the unique keys. But in Neverwinter, they typically give keys that have value. So what you can do is you can change the box to give out, bottom line, the value of the key and greater. So it's always, you get the value of the key, so it's not psychologically or subjectively to someone, to most people, as a gamble, because you'll always get the value of the key and the chance of getting something better. That's kind of the thing that I forgot to answer a little bit back about people's concern, or they wanted to hear my take on my thoughts on the lockbox system that is still carried in cryptics. Neverwinter online game. But I was gonna just go into a qualification on the interpretation of the word gamble, basically. And that's kind of how it fits. Again, I'm paving a narrative, so if everything sounds like it's neatly packed together, is because I'm trying to explain the most cleanest version of something I've been thinking about for a really long time. There are many, many other ways to explain all the occurrences and the success that are not, to me, as neat sounding yet. Like, it's not tidy, it's not clean. So I'm only giving you one narrative that fits incredibly well. And knowing that you're someone who thinks a lot about things, you can probably think of a lot of other things. And then if you invest some time, if you're so, emotionally invested as well, you can probably come up with something equally as approachable to explain the whole, why the system is so lucrative. Outside of the obvious stuff that most people are providing. So I didn't give you a narrative that fits to what other people think is the best narrative, which is developers and publishers are greedy people. Somehow they're inhuman, so they're far more greedier than everyone else who's convinced that they're greedy. That type of perspective. That's an emotional response. It's incredibly buyer's remorse. It has moral grandstanding. I'm looking out for the other guys, yet I'm making millions of dollars off the clout of the emotional clickbait. All that stuff, it fits too, for sure. But I'm not emotionally compromised in this situation. So those perspectives are incredibly accurate for someone who's emotionally compromised. As in someone who is morally justified, socially justified, and emotionally aligned with individuals who feel gated by microtransaction, or baited, I guess, or bait and switch, or whatever moral grounds. My take on that narrative was just one that fits just as tidy, only it's coming from someone who's not upset. Because I typically not upset with the live service model. There's a inherently elegant and pragmatic and psychological way of explaining why it also works. It's not to say it's correct or accurate or right and wrong. It's just another way to fit the things you observe. I typically spend most of my time trying to think of other elegant ways of explaining things that happen that are successful. I don't just stick to whoever's most popular and join the bandwagon. It is not intellectually stimulating to me to accept anyone who's emotionally compromised writing a clickbait title about how corrupt all the people that disagree with them are except themselves. Like, rarely do these emotional arguments ever take accountability for the damage and the consequences of what they do, because they're trying to protect themselves, in my opinion. And that's incredibly reasonable. They want to protect all their community from being scammed by a game developer because they believe that's what game developers and publishers do because they run a business. That's fair enough. It also tells me that they are like them. In order to really understand that logic and that experience and that talk, when they say, I'm a gamer, so I know this feeling, and explain all these things that deal with developers, quote unquote, being greedy, and publishers, it also tells me you are also one of those people. It's hard for me to think intuitively on a way that paints developers and publishers as cynical, greedy people, because I inherently don't want to be one of them either. So I don't practice thinking like that as well. When someone presents that idea to me, I can at least see that's a reasonable take on it. Like, it checks out. The converging evidence that you present may be interpreted in that way. The first thing I think about is not thinking that my creators, the people who create things for my entertainment, are greedy businessmen that don't like video games. It is really odd when someone says they're gamer minded to think that's the most provocative way of explaining the motivations of developers and publishers. Not only that, there are individuals who like to claim credibility for being game developers and not sharing zero compassion for other game developers. That would suggest that person is likely either too far removed from the industry, so maybe they were game developers, but it was like 15 years ago, so they are no longer emotionally empathetic, or they're using credibility by flexibly labeling themselves, like they made a game that didn't take off or something, and they use that as credibility for the rotten system or something like that. And those are fairly reasonable presumptions, but without the opportunity to interact with them and talk with them, like, why are they so angry? Or how did their cynicism develop? Where is the root of all these things? I can't say anything I said was accurate, but what I can say is it takes a similar type of person to be well-versed and expert and certain about specific behaviors because you yourself participate in that behavior. It's the human condition. You are very good at seeing things the way they are if you yourself see it all the time in yourself or worry about it in yourself. I am overtly concerned with people who try to be nice all the time. Like, that's because I know that being nice doesn't help you be successful. And being kind every once in a while is great. It's sustainable. That's why I'm saying these things. So someone else could say like, oh yeah, no, but that's just like, what if you're a cloud chaser and stuff? I don't habitually see it that way. However, you can present your case, right? Show that, and I respect that. Like, it checks out. I'm just going to tell you, inherently, I won't think of that because I prefer not to. So now you ask yourself, if you want to make a friend or you want to trust someone, and the vast majority of their content is to be toxic or to do something, you have to ask yourself, do you like that toxicity? Do you see it in yourself? If you can, then you probably get along. You probably be good friends. It's harmonious when it's compatible. That's kind of it helps with making supportive friends. It helps with being successful by carving out niches, right? Being toxic in FPS games have a niche, and all those community members who accurately know that, they feed off each other and coexist perfectly well, I suppose. I don't really know. I don't really delve into that on like a intimate level. Like, I didn't just dive into a community like that. I'm always arm lengths on that stuff because I prefer to spend my time watching sappy kind giver, like people who are kind, who does it for clout. And I know that they do it for clout. Like, it's part of what allows them to get enough resources to keep doing it. So both the good, the bad, the ugly, the reality, that's all part of intimately not denying that you need to be be similar to that person in order to actually know what those people are doing. Otherwise, the only other way you can possibly know without experience is you ask them. Like, you unequivocally ask them in, like, I don't know, a forced court of law or pressured situation that they must tell the truth. That's the only time you know. So it's very concerning when someone who comes off as saying they're incredibly honest, they always care about their community, and they're crucifying a developer. If you can crucify a developer, that means you're capable of doing it too. Like, it's very concerning. I'm not saying they would or are, just it takes the mindset necessary to guess at motivation and human idiosyncrasies. Like, you have to be in that mindset, be able to imagine that mindset to create a narrative like that. So for me, I only understand specific types of people. So most of the time, I stay away from ad hominem arguments. I try not to read the person. I try to observe what's happening and best explain that. And hopefully that reflects in some way what the person is doing or what the group is doing. It's not necessarily removing the subjectivity or a more objective approach. It's trying to be as objective as I can, knowing I am subjective. I'm subjectively deciding to pay attention to certain things. I am a person who is pre-selected. So it's very difficult to know how accurately it is. But if a person presents that they can read people's minds and read into behaviors, and most of that is just dirty laundry, you start to wonder if they can ever see clean laundry. That's kind of the scary nature of the thing. And then you see like 4 million views. So you're telling me that this appeals, like, it gives you a lens into the makeup of what people resonate with and how their logic works. And how do you use this type of information? I don't really know, actually.